All right, so we're talking about millennials as customers, not millennials as employees. We're talking about them because they are, oh wait, I am supposed to make an announcement. Sorry. Pizza Expo 2019, speaker instructions, please read. Oh wait. That was what was it? That was a joke for that mockumentary. All right. In consideration of all seminar attendees, I am told to ask you to silence your cell phones. However, I will say, I don't care. I don't care. If you so much want to be that guy that you want me to know what your ringtone is, I'm always curious to know. I was trying to think about different ringtones that historical characters would have. And what about Beethoven? What ringtone should he have? Will someone sing it for me? Oh, come on, guys. Da, 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 da. But because he's deaf, he's not going to hear it, right? So everyone's going to be on the subway. Tell it. He'd have to have it on vibrate. Thank you. I don't know if vibrate was vibrate invented back then. This class is being audio recorded. The multimedia recordings are available for purchase, and they are actually multimedia. They're audio, but you also get all my slides with it. Are available for purchase from Source of Knowledge. Please take an order form as you leave this session, or you can go to the Source of Knowledge counter near the first floor entrance to the exhibit hall. At the end of this seminar, please complete a seminar evaluation on the International Pizza Expo app. If you have any problems with your new automobile and cannot give me the top rating on it. No, don't you hate when those guys do that though? You know, you buy a car, you guys know what I'm talking about? You buy a car and they have the survey, but then they beg you to give the top rating. Well, there you go. Anyway, apparently it's very helpful for them in deciding what to do next year if you fill out the survey. Who are the millennials? Why do we care? And what do they want from our restaurants? In order to tell you that story, I need to tell you this story. Okay, so we already know this story, though. This is the World War II generation. The sailors and the soldiers came back, end of the war. They embraced their riveting rosies, apparently very riveting rosies, because within like 3 years they had 2.4 children. So this is the baby boom generation, the biggest generation by far in American history, right? We all know this story? So the second part of the story is the baby boomers grew up and had kids. And those kids are the millennials. They are the largest generation by far, well, not by far, but they are the largest generation in American history. They're born approximately 1980 to 2000. Everyone has different years for this. I use that. It's easy to remember. As of today, the youngest are 18 and the oldest are 39. And you're like, oh, Micah, that's not 20 years. Well, it just depends when in the year they had their birthday, right? They are a larger generation than the baby boom, and they're considerably larger than Generation X. Their purchasing power is quickly growing. Anything you want to share with the class? Their purchase power is quickly growing. It's been estimated that in 2017, they spent $200 billion. But that's a complete underestimate, because what are millennials doing now? They're working for companies, right? They're not all staying home and eating ramen, right? They are working for companies, and that means they are controlling a lot of spending, a lot of spending. The great, I don't know if I have the statistic here, but a very good proxy for business activity is airline travel. Because, a very large percentage of business travelers these days are now millennials. For most of their lives, a telephone has meant a smartphone. The cover of my next book, which is going to be called, it is called Ignore Your Customers and They'll Go Away. It has an old school phone with a cord and everything. And I was worried about using that. I was actually worried about using that. But I asked my son, who's 14, And he said, oh, Dad, we've all seen old movies. So they've all long been able to count on having internet, GPS, TripAdvisor, Yelp, PayPal. There's generally been an app for that. Time has been different. Amazon has always been able to deliver just about anything overnight. And overnight means actually much shorter than overnight, right? You can order it, depending what time zone you're in, you can order at 11 p.m. and have it, if you pay extra, like 9 in the next morning. So that's not even really overnight. And now we have even faster. So one reason to care about millennials is because they have a lot of purchase power on their own. The other reason to care is what's mentioned in this quote. So this is from, when he told me this, he was the head of innovation for Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts. Very expensive, fancy, spiffy place, not generally considered a millennial-friendly brand. However, Chris said it's a very important demographic for 2 reasons. They're important as a group of guests in their own right, but their significance is more than that. They're a unique group in terms of their impact on the rest of the customer base. The behaviors and expectations of the millennial group tend to shape the thinking of the rest of us. So a millennial wants something right now, their older brother and sister are going to want it tomorrow. And their parents are going to want it the next week. There is actually a group on Facebook called My Life's Officially Over. My parents have joined Facebook. And now it could be grandparents, right? So I have 6 principles. Only 5 of them are going to turn out to be prize-worthy, but I have 6 principles. Number 1, millennials are the enemies of stupid. They are the young people who, when they're working for you, and mostly I'm not going to talk about them as employees, but they're the young people who the first day on the job, they'll walk into the CEO's office and say, why are we still using this stupid Excel spreadsheet? Don't you know there are better tools online? And if you're a pain in the ass, cranky old boss, you'll say, get out of here. Go work in the mailroom for 20 years before you give me advice. But if you want to learn from these people, you say, oh, really? Okay, maybe we should explore options other than Excel. So they are the enemies of stupid. And the same thing is true as customers. Don't make them call your restaurant for what I call stupid stuff. I put this as a trademark. So with my consulting clients who are squeamish about profanity, I call this stuff stupid stuff. If I can tell they don't care, I call it stupid shit. This is stuff that a customer doesn't want to call you for. It's your hours, it's what's on your menu, it's your address. So let's talk about FAQs, frequently asked questions. Generally, these aren't actually the frequently asked questions, are they? They're what you and your web designer put up there before you even open. So you don't know what's going to be a frequently asked question yet. So much better is to keep it up to date, make it searchable. There are some ways to make it crowdsourced. There are even ways now to use artificial intelligence to build an FAQ that is more like Google for your site. And this stuff's really quite useful. Offer, as far as avoiding stupid stuff and pleasing people who are enemies of stupid, offer self-service at least as an option where possible and where it makes sense. Do you guys know Shake Shack? Shake Shack? So Shake Shack is Danny Meyer. Danny Meyer's this great, I'll talk about him a little more later, but he's this great master of hospitality in New York. But his latest thing is Shake Shack, which is not white tablecloth, very informal, and yet he strives to have the same level of hospitality. However, they are putting in ordering options other than ordering from a person because they feel, and they have very long lines, they feel that some customers are going to want that. Here is a test that I made up, a completely unauthorized use of Hanna-Barbera information of IP, right? The Jetsons Test. It's a colorful little test to decide which customer service functions belong on which side of the human-digital divide. Because customers today sometimes really do want us out of their way. It's just hard to figure out where those places are. So the Jetsons aired in 1963, I think. It was filmed in 1962. It takes place in 2062, or is it 2063? Anyone know? If you do, you're more of a geek than I am. So it's way in the future. And a lot of things, they got a lot of things wrong about the future. People are not just sexist, they are overtly sexist. It's very sexist. They all smoke. So they got a few of those things wrong. But the things relating to customer service and technology, they nailed. How did they do that? They had some very smart futurists working on the show. So apparently you should listen to futurists because they know. So secretaries don't take dictation. I love this one because they got it like 80% right. Instead, callers leave their message on a rewritable vinyl LP. So that's almost right? Almost. There's self-serve push-button breakfasts. And because it's a sitcom, something always goes a little bit wrong with those, right? House cleaning via Rosie the robot, who has a New York accent and attitude to match. Do you guys, and you know, this one's true, do you guys have a Roomba so we have, so we have this little robot, we have the mopping version, not the vacuuming. Who wants, vacuuming's fun, but mopping is not fun. So we don't have the vacuuming one. The other thing is the vacuuming Roomba doesn't work that great, but the mopping one works pretty well. And it works better than not mopping at all, which is what would happen. So the way these things work is they go along the floor until they run into an obstacle. And then they put that into their program so they know not to bump into it in the future. Now we have a little beagle who is 100% entirely blind. And that's the same way that he navigates things, right? When he bumps into a wall once, that goes into his program, and he never does that again. The problem is that neither the Roomba nor my dog really know about each other. So that is still a collision point, and neither of them ever expects it. Human-delivered service on the Jetsons adds warmth and a bit of what I would call palace intrigue. There's the friendly, southern accented receptionist. Henry, who's pictured here, is the superintendent of their apartment building up in the sky, which looks a lot like a much taller Space Needle in Seattle. He does some handiwork, but mostly he's a buddy to the family, and he finds solutions. Like when Astro, the dog, gets lost, he finds him. Occasional cab drivers and such, that's the one thing they didn't anticipate was Uber and Lyft. Occasional cab drivers and such who provide human interactions and laughter. And I think this is a pretty good way to divide the customer experience. If customer service can be delivered more efficiently via automation or self-service, offer it that way, at least as an option. If the service in question requires or benefits from human warmth, then have humans deliver it. And have them do their very best, warmest, most spectacular job during those moments. Zappos, they're extremely friendly on the phone, extremely. If they hear a dog barking, they're like, oh, I love dogs. What kind of dogs do you have? They hear kids crying, they're like, Sophia, have you taken the Zappos tour yet here? So this is something you can do in Vegas. You can go to Zappos and see how they do great customer service. You can. I will tell you a sad thing that I saw once. Oh, I don't know if this should go on the tape. I saw a bus of bankers. And where do the bankers stay in town? Four Seasons, of course, right? So that's not the sad part. The sad part is they're leaving one of the great customer-focused companies in the world to go to Zappos to see how customer service is done. And I'm like, guys, it's being done all around you. But it's a great tour. Go to Zappos, they give great customer service, and they're super friendly on the phone. They hear a kid crying, they're like, oh, I love kids, and so forth. And it's not always that corny. Like the one call that I loved that I listened in on was, her name's Madison, and she's a contact center person there. And she's on the phone, and the woman's calling because she's having so much trouble finding narrow shoes for a wedding that she's going. going to. And instead of Madison being like many of money contact center people would be like, oh, okay, I'll be happy to help you with it. She's like, narrows are the worst, aren't they? My aunt has narrow feet, and I swear every other conversation we have is about how hard it is for her to get fitted. And oh, you could just hear this woman relax on the other end of the call because someone finally understands me. So the point is that Zappos gives great customer service on the phone. Now, almost nobody orders from Zappos on the phone because it's an e-commerce company, right? But Tony, the owner, well, he's not that. Jeff Bezos is the owner, but Tony, who started, or one of the people who started the company, his theory is that even though we don't sell much of anything on the phone, most of our customers at some point in their journey as a customer are going to call in. And when they do, we want to blow them away because that will then spread the word for us and build them as a customer for life. So let me give you some examples. I promised I wouldn't say anything good about Domino's or Pizza Hut and so forth. And I'm not. But are any of you old enough or have watched the History Channel and you remember the 30-minute delivery guarantee from Domino's? Okay, all right. So this was a spectacularly wrong-headed idea, right? Because this is the United States, home of the free-range trial lawyer, and it was just a crazy idea because who are pizza delivery people? They are teenage boys, right? Right? Couple girls, mostly boys. They have just bought a Camaro, and now they have to find a way to pay it off. So they go to work for Domino's, and they have a good attitude, and then the boss says, well, there's only 14 minutes left on our guarantee. You better make it or else. And so they go right into the nearest telephone pole. That's actually best case. Worst case, which happened several times, is they go right into the nearest pedestrian. So Domino's decided they didn't want to be a full employment fund for trial lawyers, and they came up with something different. Now, what I think is interesting actually is outside of the United States, they still have this guarantee. So there is some value to us not having tort reform. The streets are safer thanks to the trial lawyers. So what has Domino's done instead? Well, they have this pizza tracker, which is almost too much information about your pizza. There are five, right? There's 5 steps. There's order placed, prep, bake, the ironically named quality check. I've been waiting to use that line. You're welcome. The ironically named quality check, another corporation I'll never work for. And finally, pickup. So this, I think, is good because timeliness is very important. And people generally don't want to call to ask about these things. I don't need my pizza to be there in 30 minutes. I don't care if it's there in 35 minutes. I'd love it's in 25 minutes. What I want to know, and most drivers would prefer that I knew as well, is when I need to have my clothes on to answer the door, right? In spite of all the pornos you've seen. So this is good. This gives people this. So here is a completely technological solution. This is actually, is this 4 Seasons? Yeah, I think it is. So this is a completely no humans involved. Well, actually, that's not true. There's some human. So you don't need to talk to a human, but this actually is filled. It is populated by the local concierge at 4 Seasons. So that's kind of a cool mix, I think, rather than having it all come from Google or whatever. This, I think, is very interesting. So if you guys need a junket to take, I've already recommended the Zappos tour, but if you really want to take a junket, why don't you go to the Broadmoor? Do you know the Broadmoor? Do you know them yet? So the Broadmoor is a 555-star, 555 diamond resort in Colorado Springs, Colorado. What does that mean? That means 5 stars for lodging, 5 stars for one of their restaurants. They have maybe 8 restaurants, but you can only get one certified, I think. Well, I don't know, the Wynn might have 2. No? You can have more than one? Okay. Well, anyway, one of theirs is certified as 5 star. And their spa is certified as 5-star, and same on the Diamonds. It's a spectacular place. So most of those 8 restaurants are completely, as you would expect, human-delivered service. They do have one, though, that uses tablet ordering, and it's called something like Natural Epicurean. And Natural Epicurean. So I think it's a good use of a tablet, because the Natural Epicurean is a place that serves people with all sorts of dietary restrictions or interests. So by using a tablet, you're able to find out, to make a hypothetical meal and find out how much sodium it has, if that's what you're into, how much gluten. By the way, I always ask for extra gluten, but I know I'm in the minority these days. I'll keep you guys in business. Allergens and so forth. So I think that's smart, because that's more info than a human waiter. You know, you could wing it, but you probably wouldn't be right about everything. So I think that's a good use of the tablet. The nice thing is, though, that they also have really wonderful wait staff. And they'll answer any question the tablet can't, which is good, because my son, I think he was 11, maybe 12 at the time, he had a stump the tablet question. He asked the waitress, "What's the least healthy thing on the menu?" And she rose to the challenge. She was like, "Well, I can go down to our other restaurant and get some American cheese, and I think I can get some white bread." So she really rose to the occasion. So I think that's a good combination of human and inhuman. Sometimes you do want to just stay with entirely human-delivered service. And I'm going to give you an example of this. If you want to spend some more money researching customer service, take a flight in business class on Air New Zealand, all right? I'm recommending it. If you want to deduct it on your taxes, I'll write you a note saying that I recommended this. Maybe I won't. Okay, so Air New Zealand has built these new business class cabins. You know, all of Delta has one and everything, but the ones on Air New Zealand are a little different, because instead of being self-service, lay flat seats, which is what's standard, they have it set up so that when you're ready for bed, the flight attendant has to come and make up your bed for you. So it's a little bit arguably less efficient, but they thought this was an essential touch point that they did not want to remove from how they did things. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's a choice. And, you know, they stuck to their guns and made that choice. I think it's interesting. A large study of the hospitality industry. Now, this was actually hotels, I think. But it's very interesting, because it's not what you would think of from reading all the pro-eliminating people stuff that's out there in the business press. It says the opposite of that. A large study of the hospitality industry found that the number of employees with whom guests interact affects overall satisfaction. Customers who interact more often with service staff and with a broad cross-section of that staff reported greater satisfaction. The highest satisfaction was reported by guests who were served by 4 or more types of employees. And the lowest was by those who received no further service beyond front desk check-in. Now, the caveat I'm going to give you about this is, just like being on stage, if you're on stage, you're either adding or detracting from the scene. This is a principle in drama class. It's also true in service, right? So if there's a bunch of housekeepers wandering around a hotel and they don't say hi when you pass them, they are detracting. So this is customers interacting with presumably properly trained employees. Principle number 2, sharing is central to the millennial lifestyle. Use this to your advantage by helping customers collect and share what I call social currency. So there's no more before, during, and after in travel, dining, or shopping. It is all during. Your customers are sharing all the time. So think about taking a trip. I know you're not in the travel business, but it used to be you would dream about where to go. You'd look at a bunch of brochures. You'd go on your trip. You'd give your emergency contact info to someone. You'd shoot a few rolls of film, just a few. You'd have them made into slides. That's what's in this picture. That's a slide carousel. Then you would Shanghai your neighbors to come over and almost involuntarily see these photos. And you're showing them, and you're apologizing for them, because several of them are in backwards, so the t-shirts read the wrong way. You know, they say it is Coke or whatever. That's how it used to be. But now, while you're dreaming about where to go, you're asking online, you're saying, I'm dreaming about this and that. Where should I go? As you get actual recommendations, you're doing it online. Even when you're deciding how to pay for your trip, not like the old days where you'd save up for it, you can even involve people at that point. I've seen people do a GoFundMe campaign for a vacation. Of course, I always feel more like, oh, go fund yourself, buddy. But it happens. And then once you're on the trip, you're sharing immediately. And the same is true in restaurants, right? I went to Jose Andres' Bazaar restaurant in Beverly Hills the other night. And the food was so share-worthy. Number one, it tasted good. But number two, it looked amazing. The grilled octopus had stenciled tentacles. It was astonishing. Absolutely astonishing. I don't think they made it taste any better, but it tasted great anyway. But there was no way I wasn't going to post that. It was just amazing. So people are sharing all the time. If it's not, let's say it together, people. If it's not on my phone, it didn't happen. So let's try to get on their phones, okay? Why do customers share? One reason is to achieve social status. So in the olden days, you were supposed to buy a Chevy, and then the pinnacle of your career, you would buy a Cadillac or maybe a Corvette, right? That's how it was supposed to work. But today, status can be achieved by collecting and then sharing experiences. Brands in all industries can facilitate this by making, first of all, by making it an experience, making it worth sharing, and then making it easy to share. So this is a hotel in Sydney, Australia. It's called the 1888 Hotel, which is the year that some kind of Kodak film was invented. But it's colloquially known as the Instagram Hotel because they've already mapped out all these Instagram-friendly sites around town and within the hotel. So not only are the rooms cool looking, but they're all different. So, you know, think about this. If you're sharing with your friends that I was in room 401 and it has this cool purple stuff, then wow, someone else might want to stay in room 401. Pretty smart. And to make it really explicit what they want you to do, there's actually a frame in the lobby, right? I think that's pretty smart. Now, I will tell you sometimes, so this was a Ritz-Carlton. Sophia, I'm so sorry it took this long to get to one of your favorite brands. This is the Ritz-Carlton in Kyoto, Japan. So one of the things that's spectacular about Ritz-Carlton these days is that they've gotten away from the cookie-cutter hotels. Now every newly built hotel is very authentic to the local setting. And the one in Kyoto, which is the most traditional city, famous city in Japan for tradition, as far as I know. It has the geishas and the temples. And so they had my son have a little lesson with an expert on samurai, this and that. And they dressed him up. And he learned to use this sword. And then someone from the Ritz-Carlton took pictures of us, hoping that I would, I guess, share them. I thought it was smart. However, so that's me with my son. So I guess they took this picture thinking I was smiling, but I think we should zoom in on whether that's a real smile. That is Dad terrified because this is actually a real sword. And for Pete's sake, they have dressed my son in these little toe socks. So I'm like, how am I going to explain that my son's coming back with 8 toes? So do your buns look good on Instagram? I don't know. I'm not sure. I want to know. But at Chili's they do, because Chili's spent $100,000 to develop a new glaze that they put on their buns, which they feel is more social media friendly. It looks better. And that's also why they changed from kind of the funky beach vibe that they used to have with the paper that the wings come in. Now they come in these stainless steel containers. That's why, because they thought it photographed better. However, I think just, a beautiful pizza. This is from one of our local pizzerias. It's pretty, that's pretty share-worthy to me, I think, for me. Number 3, millennials are most comfortable with an authentic, eye-level, peer-on-peer style of service. So this was an interview I did for one of my books. A young woman said, the kind of customer service I enjoy is mutually respectful when a server seems on a par with me. So I said, well, what do you mean on a par? What do you mean? She said, well, I think what I mean is that it's comfortable, that we're social equivalents. And even though, let's say, I think she was talking about a barista, even if the barista is waiting on me, I know the shoe could be on the other foot, I could be waiting on him, and either way would be comfortable. It's not like in The Crown, when you're working in Buckingham Palace and you were born into servitude and you understand your whole life, you're not going to be like the royals. Now, of course, they have a whole passive-aggressive thing going on. So they actually, in a way, think they're better than the royals. But by and large, they're acting as if they are less than. So she said that she's not really comfortable with that anymore. Or she's not comfortable with that. She wants this more eye-level idea. Here's how Richard Branson put it. He was talking about these Asian and Middle Eastern airlines who hire, I don't know if you know this, but like if you're on one of these Middle Eastern airlines, it's not going to be Middle Eastern women who serve you, right? It's going to be women from the Philippines because they're great at service. There's no qualms about serving alcohol and so forth. And they give great service. They really do. But so Richard wasn't saying we're going to distinguish Virgin Atlantic by having better service because it's great service. He said we're going to distinguish it by having more authentic, kind of more differentiated service. So I said, well, what should we call that? He said, well, what was that old movie? I said, Stepford Wives. He said, yes, that's what I don't want. I don't want Stepford service in my hotels. And I think that's a good way to think about what you should avoid. Patrick O'Connell runs one of the fanciest restaurants in the world, the Inn at Little Washington. Anyone been there? All right. If you have a couple grand to spare, and I'm sure that includes a glass of their best wine, you can have dinner at the Inn at Little Washington. It's actually a great place. We used to live it's a great place, the Inn at Little Washington. It has, it's double 5-star. It actually has all the certifications it could have. So it's double 5-star, because they don't have a spa, but double 5-star, double 5 diamond. And Patrick just got his 3rd Michelin star. So that's it. He can die now and have done it all as far as stars, but that is not really his attitude. He's always trying to improve. So he says that people come to him, all they know about working there is that this is a really fancy place. So they come in and they start putting on airs. They put the towel over the arm, and they strut around. And he tells them, look, we don't want you to be an imitation of a waiter you saw in a bad movie from the 50s. We want the real thing. And I'll tell you, he does actually have the real thing. Now, part of this being a real thing as a waiter is to know who can take a joke and who can't. And it's a tricky line. So my wife and I were there, and we were going to have the tasting menu, which is, I think, the best thing to do. Except I asked for my tasting menu without the foie gras. So he said, oh, okay. And not Patrick, but someone who's working for him. And he said, is that for ethical reasons? And I said, yeah. And he said, I assure you, Mr. Solomon, this goose's liver was tortured for a very good cause. Well, I'm sorry, not tortured, abused for a very good cause, as yours will be later in the evening. Scripted service, but you gotta know who can take a joke. It's someone else that could totally have backfired with. Scripted service provided by servile, unempowered employees who have to ask a manager before doing anything unusual or creative for a customer. That is not the kind of customer service that people want today. And employees don't want to be delivering that kind of service either. This is hard to read, but this is the world's greatest live chat. Greatest. Will never be topped. So the backstory of this was that Amazon opened a contact center in Cape Town, South Africa. And they had a new employee. It was only his 2nd week or something. And his honest-to-God name is Thor. Honest to God, that's his name. So this starts out, Warmest greetings, my name is Thor. Now, he is a great customer, too, because the customer says immediately, greetings, Thor, can I be Odin? So Odin is Thor's dad, right? So Thor jumps right into it. Odin, father, how art thou doing on this here fine day? Thor, my son, agony raises upon my life. Amazon says, this is outrageous. Who dares defy the all-father Odin? What has occurred to cause this agony? I am afraid the book I ordered to defeat our enemies has been misplaced. How can we keep Valhalla intact without our sacred book? Amazon says, this is blasphemy. Wherever this book has been taken to, I shall make it my duty to get it back to you. I fear it is Loki. So Loki's like you guys know? Loki's like the tricky god. He's like the Iago of Norse mythology. I fear it is Loki, but I dare not blame him for such things. So he says in more language that he's going to create a quest to get him a new book. The customer playing Odin says, very well, my son. Do it for me, Thor. But most importantly, do it for the mortals whose destiny and grades rely on this book. Alas, the treasure has been returned to you. You now need to reinstate your book. So what this is saying is that he can't literally replace it, but he can refund it, and then the customer can buy it again. So then the customer says, okay, so role play aside, I have my money back and I reorder the book? Great. And then he switches right into like millennial speak right after that. Wow, hooking me up with one-day delivery, sweet. Ha ha, yeah man, got to get you your book ASAP. So this is great. A couple of caveats. It's not this is spectacular customer service, but it's not always the time to give spectacular service because sometimes customers are in a hurry. This customer made it clear that he wasn't by asking if he could be Odin, right? So it's not always the time to wow customers if it slows them down. Another problem with telling your employees to be authentic is we don't really want them to be authentic, right? Right? I do not, as a customer, as a boss, if my employee is hung over, I want them to authentically suck it up. I don't want them to authentically share that hangover with everybody they're serving. Language can also be tricky with, these are actual examples from some places you may have been, not the St. Regis, but some great hotels and restaurants in America that had told their employees, well, just be yourself. Here are some of the side effects that I have encountered. I ate my breakfast apparently pretty quickly, and this was an actual certified 5-star restaurant, 5-diamond restaurant. Oh, I see your breakfast wasn't super gross. Are you still picking at that salad? Oh. How are we this morning? Okay, can we talk about this for a second? You guys all speak English? If I'm me, who are you? You're you, right? Right? You're not we, okay? Is there any question about this? This is actually serious because, I mean, it's not, this is not the hill you want to die on, right? But it's serious because when nurses work with like the elderly, they do this we talk, and it's very infantilizing. It makes you feel like a baby. It's not comfortable. If some waitress says, how are we this evening? I'm like, I have no fucking idea, but I'll tell you, I'm doing okay, right? It's my last talk, I can cuss, I guess. How are we this morning? All right, and now I'm getting to a controversial one. No problem, no problem. So Sophia works for a 5-star hotel. You work for the Wynn, right? Wynn what? Encore. And Encore, okay, great. So, Sophia, if a customer thanks you for something, what don't you say?
No problem.
Right. Is that what they tell you, not to say it?
Instead of telling us what not to say, kind of more along the lines of acceptable language.
Oh, okay. So what is acceptable to say if I thanked you?
So it was my pleasure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Certainly.
Okay. So those are all good. So the problem with no problem is it takes over everything. So what is the problem with no problem, if there is a problem? Do you guys agree that this is not good? Alan, What's wrong with it? So it is pretty negative. I mean, it gets you thinking about the idea that maybe there was a problem. Maybe if I thanked Alan for something and he said no problem, I'd be thinking, well, okay, maybe next time if I ask for something similar, it will be a problem. But I think beyond that, it's hard. The little no doesn't really negate the entire. You know, I saw this guy with this greatest shirt, and it was, you know, a red line through something like if you're saying no, and then it said negativity. It said no negativity. I like, that is the greatest shirt. And he said, nobody gets it. Nobody gets it. But so if I asked you to not think about a problem, you're probably going to think about a problem. Let's try a little test here. Whatever you do, don't think about a big pink elephant. What are you thinking about right now? What'd you say? Dumbo. Yeah, most people tell me they're thinking about an elephant. I did have one woman say, French fries, which I think is totally valid as well. But generally, if I ask you to not think about something, you're going to be thinking about it. Number 4, I will say again, this is not the hill you want to die on. If you have the perfect millennial employee, but they just can't stop themselves from saying no problem or no worries, don't fire them. Keep them. They may be great in a lot of other ways. The thing about my pleasure, absolutely true. So the Ritz-Carlton as a modern brand was created in the 1980s. I mean, we think of it as going back to Cesar Ritz. Sort of true, sort of not really true. It was really started in the 1980s by some very smart hoteliers. And one of the things they did, they wanted to provide consistent service all over the world because they were convinced that this was going to be the worldwide luxury brand. So how do we make it consistent? Well, we make sure everyone talks the same. So they made a list of things to say. And they said, if someone thanks you, say, my pleasure, you're welcome, certainly, absolutely, and so forth. What happened, though, was everyone glommed onto this my pleasure, and it became kind of a brand thing, a brand standard. You started to see it even in their marketing, that it is my pleasure. So when the Ritz-Carlton they're a very data-driven company. You think of them as touchy-feely, and they are, but they're also very data-driven. So when they did some customer surveys in the 90s, they came back that your service is good, but it feels a little robotic. And so they realized part of this was everyone was talking exactly the same. So they loosened it up. As long as you're polite, you can say whatever you want. However, during that time, when my pleasure was the thing to say, a certain well-known restaurant chain took the training at Ritz-Carlton. Who was it? Right, it's Chick-fil-A. So now, for just $2.99 plus tax, if your politics allow, you can get a my pleasure from Chick-fil-A. But back at Ritz-Carlton, you can't really be sure what they're going to say, except that it's going to be polite. Point number 4, millennial customers enjoy finding attached meaning in the services and products that they purchase. What's attached meaning? It's someone who will happily pay $5 for a latte if part of it goes to the rainforest. Or it's something about the aesthetic makes it more than simply a purchase. So here's a good example. I was in Denmark. And these were the room keys. This is your key, use it to open the door, turn on the lights, blah, blah, blah. And then they tell it's made out of 80% Nordic wood, and it's a coating of plastic so that it's durable. It's not just recyclable, but it's reusable. Hopefully they change the code, right? But it's reusable. So I think that's good. That's attaching some positive meaning to just simply to me entering my hotel room. The danger, though, is that millennials will kill you for greenwashing. Do any of you know what greenwashing is? Yeah, it's fake eco, or more generally, cause washing, which is like saying, "Oh, we love our employees and we treat them great," when you don't actually. So, cause washing, greenwashing. Here's a quote from a millennial customer. People my age are especially adept at figuring out if a company is being pro-people or pro-environment in its marketing, and anti-people or anti-environment in its actions. This was an actual campaign in Canada. Not well received. This, much closer to home, is a little restaurant called Poppy's that some marketing person told them they should put a little patina of eco onto their stuff. Poppy's was constructed with the earth in mind, using sustainable materials that do the least damage to our planet. We feel unneeded comma, coexisting with nature while conducting business in the world today requires awareness and active participation. Poppy's cares, printed on recyclable paper. Okay, great. Because it's really hard to find unrecyclable paper. That's greenwashing. Millennials see time as the ultimate luxury. Beware of what I call the cliff of dissatisfaction. So the cliff of dissatisfaction is the amount of time, length of time it takes until customers in your industry lose faith that you can serve them on time, okay? It's different for every industry. It's actually different for every time of the day. Most of you don't serve breakfast, but people are in more of a hurry at breakfast time. So it changes based on customer, changes based on industry, changes based on time of day. One customer can be in a big hurry now and not at another juncture. Starbucks knows exactly how long it takes before their customers get tired. This picture is from Hong Kong or something, so this is a longer line than you would probably see here. But they know, and so they do a couple things about it. Number one, they try to make the wait more pleasant. There's clever merchandising in the stores. It's sort of, they're trying to sell that stuff, but mostly they're trying to keep us lulled into a sense of it's not taking that long. If the line gets really long, they'll send people out to give samples and so forth. They've introduced their mobile app, which is wildly successful. And they let it guide their real estate acquisitions, right? If lines are consistently this long on one corner, what do? They open another one right next door, right, or on the other corner. I live in the Seattle area. I have actually seen a Starbucks within a Starbucks. So it's true. I'll explain it later if you care. It has happened. I have seen it. All right, and this is pretty good. This is from Chili's. We can seat you in 5 to 15 minutes. Are you really ready to get in line? I think this is a clever mobile app. I don't think it requires a lot of fancy development to do these kind of things. You can give someone a buzzer and they can go elsewhere in the mall or whatever it is. There are a lot of solutions respecting the time of the customer. I thought this was smart as well. This is a Marriott restaurant in an airport. And this is called the 5-10-20 menu. And the reason for this menu is that if I have an airplane coming, or otherwise I'm in a hurry, I will always ask the server, well, what's quick? And servers always say, oh, everything's pretty quick, right? Which either means you have no idea, you don't care, or there's great variances in the process, right? Sometimes the chili takes a long time, sometimes it doesn't. So Marriott is committing, I know this is hard to read, they're committing to having certain items that are ready in 5 minutes, hummus and so forth. 10 minutes, and then, I love this, in 10 minutes it says, at your leisure, and then 20 minutes if you have all the time in the world. I think that's pretty smart. Number 6, millennial, and this is the question that there's no prize for, sorry. Millennials expect an answer of yes, as do most customers today. So the attitude to try to have your employees have, is the answer's going to be yes. Now, what was your question? Now, it's hard to get the employees to have that attitude if you're always talking about regulations and so forth. I talked to a CEO who completely revamped his onboarding process for employees because one of his new employees, he found her in tears. And he's like, what's the problem? And she said, well, I joined your company because I thought we were going to be serving customers and it was going to be fun and it was going to be nice. I went to the onboarding. The onboarding seemed to me like 100 things I could get fired for. She's like, that's scary. So if that's the way you approach everything, it's hard to have your employees have the right attitude. The right attitude is where everyone has a goal of getting to yes for every customer, rather than figuring out ways to say, no, not my department. It doesn't work that way around here. Sadly, we cannot accommodate that request. Just talking like someone in a Grey Poupon commercial doesn't make it any less of a no, right? If you call back in the morning, perhaps we'll be able to help you. There's so many things wrong with that, right? Probably it's true that the right person to say it's a bookkeeping question or something. That right person will be back in the morning. But you can take a message, you can say, oh yeah, Judy handles that, and I'm sorry she is gone for the day, but I can have her call you back right after she gets in at 9 a.m. Much better answer, right? So this is a typical hotel phone. Let's count these together. Typical guest room phone, right? There's the alphanumeric keypad, and then there's these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. These two don't really count. So it's 13. There's 13 extra buttons, which means as a guest, I have 12 possibilities of pressing the wrong button, right? 12 possibilities that I'm going to call the bellman and be told that I'm supposed to, my question is really for the valet and so forth. So Richard Branson says, or at least said to me, that his next billion-dollar brand is going to be Virgin Hotels. However, at this point, there's only one Virgin Hotel. It's in downtown Chicago. There's one opening right now in San Francisco, and there's big announcement locally. I don't know if you heard that, but they're taking over the Hard Rock. But right now, it's just one hotel in Chicago. So he and his CEO of his brand, Raul Leal, decided to try to get all the irritants out of their hotel that had bugged them other places. So one of the great things is they do sort of have mini bars now, but it's all street prices. So it's no longer $4.95 for a Snickers bar. So it's street prices. That's smart. Prices. Why do I keep saying that? I guess I'm getting to the prizes part of the presentation. But another thing they did is they said, we don't like those old phones with all the chances for Micah to press the wrong button. We're just going to design our own phones. It's just going to have one button with cartoonishly large lettering. Cartoonishly large. It says yes. It's going to be in our red because that's our color. And I've tried this. I tried this at the Chicago hotel. I press the button and someone answers yes. And she has a beautiful British accent, probably fake because this is on Wabash in Chicago. Probably fake, but I don't care. Beautiful British accent. And more important than how she talks is that she will get whatever I want for me. So that is the way to be thinking about service. This is also useful in the hotels because it's a visual reminder. There are throughout the hotel, so it's a visual reminder for employees that we're striving to get to yes. Now I'm going to give you a couple caveats. I'm going to talk about what to do if you can't say yes, but I'm also going to say that my rule about always saying yes does not apply to issues of safety, security, and customer privacy, right? So there's not a problem here, but if one of you had put your seat in front of the emergency exit, I would tell you to move your ass somewhere else. I wouldn't use those words, and that's how you need to be as a restaurateur about fire codes, about safety codes. It's very important. Privacy, no, I'm sorry, I can't share that info with you. That's just it. And there have been some nice companies that have tried to be nice about privacy, and it has backfired. A nice person working in Apple, which has excellent customer support in my experience, excellent customer support, was scammed by a hacker who said, oh, I lost my blah, 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 and he gave the privacy questions, and the person didn't really remember the name of his dog, and so they let him pass on that. It turned out it was a hacker trying to get some codes for, I don't remember the exact situation. So my rule about getting to yes doesn't apply to these, and it certainly doesn't apply to issues of security either. But generally, if you can't say yes, what you should do is to try not to say no without having a yes within the same breath. And this is actually one of the requirements. I write for Forbes, but I'm not involved in the checking out hotel area at all. But one of the requirements for being a 5-star Forbes hotel is don't say no to a guest without, Sophia, do you know the answer? That's exactly right. Without giving them one or two reasonable alternatives. Exactly right. And this is why Encore by Win keeps its rating. So here's an example of not saying no without having a yes within the same breath. You have this really demanding, really self-centered customer. They ask something ridiculous. You don't have to say yes, but you do have to try to work it out. So here's an example I came up with. You have a really loyal customer. They love how you do things. They love it so much that they decide they're going to try it at home. They buy a pizza oven. We actually did that at one of these pizza expos. We bought one of those Blackstone ones, I think it's called. You know, it's not a stone, blah, blah, blah. It's like a $500 oven. It's actually kind of fun. Believe me, we are not competing with you guys. We're not, but it's fun. My daughter invented a dessert pizza. It's kind of god-awful. But I'll tell you the recipe because it actually, you know, it's actually pretty good. The problem is after pizza, I'm not usually hungry for dessert, but it's actually a dessert calzone, and here's all you do, all right? You make the dough. This is the entire recipe that my daughter created, and it's actually pretty good. You make the dough, you put one Reese's cup inside it, you close it up, and you bake it, and that's your dessert calzone. It's actually pretty good. So we play around with it at home, but we are not competition for you. But anyway, assume you have a customer like this, and they call, they say, and they want you to come over and show them how to use their pizza oven late at night. Here's how you might answer. Although I'm not able to come over to your house tonight to show you how to use your own pizza oven, perhaps we could arrange a FaceTime tomorrow with one of our cooks. So you're not saying no without giving them an alternative. All right, we have reached the recap part. That's Potter. He's one of our 4 dogs. He doesn't feel comfortable with the hipster outfit here, but he's also a good boy. So I saw a New Yorker cartoon the other day, and the dog is talking to himself. There's a little thought bubble, and it says, "Always good dog, never great dog." But Potter is a good, great dog. So he did wear this hat. He did pose for this, but not very happily. So this is the recap part of my program. It's very short, even though I see this is scaring people. Hey, better odds for you guys, right? I've always hesitated to give recaps because I used to own a company that manufacturing. I know this sounds almost like making buggy whips, but very quaint. But we made CDs and DVDs for independent musicians and actors and whoever it was. So one of our clients was the amazing comedian Margaret Cho. And Margaret Cho has this routine where her aging mom is leaving a 20-minute voicemail. 20-minute voicemail. I don't know if you know this theory, but nobody under age 30 uses voicemail because it's like leaving a message where you know the person isn't, right? But Margaret's mom is, I don't know, in her 70s or whatever, and she leaves these long voicemails. And then at the end of the 20 minutes, she says, to recap, and then for 10 more minutes, she says what she already talked about. So this is not like this. This is very quick, and it's also really nice because there are prizes. So here is how this is going to work. Alan, you've seen this happen before. Will you be my assistant on this? Okay. And Alan, why don't you tell everyone who you are? Because where you work and what do you do and stuff? In Sacramento. Excellent. Tuscany? Is that? Taste of Tuscany. Thank you. Taste of Tuscany. So Alan is going to help us out. The way this works is I'm going to put the quiz question on the board, so to speak. You guys are on your honor not to shout out the answer. I know it's hard. These questions are easy-ish. I'll take away the ish. These questions are easy. So it's going to be hard not to shout out the answer. Don't do it. Don't what? What are we not going to do? Perfect. This is like the end of Life of Brian where the Jesus figure Brian says, you must all learn to think for yourselves. Do you remember this? And they're all like, we must all think for ourselves, they say in unison. So this is like that. All right. So don't shout these out, please. Otherwise you're going to ruin it for the next people because I won't be able to put the questions on the board. Number 1. Millennials are the blank of stupid. Whoever thinks they know the answer, raise their hand. Alan's going to pick one of them. The opposite of stupid. Well, I think that's true. However, I think that's true. They're very smart. Actually, this is true. They're the best educated generation in history. I know that we think about our founding fathers and they were amazingly well educated. You know, they knew Latin and Greek and Hebrew and all that. True, but that's a very small subset of people in America. Overall, best educated generation ever is the millennials. However, not the answer I was looking for. Anyone else know the answer? The enemy of stupid. They don't like things that are stupid as employees or as customers. I'm sorry. All right. Number 2. And honestly, because I like to say yes to people, if I had more prizes, I would give you one as well. I literally don't. I'm using that in the real meaning of the word rather than the millennial meaning. I literally don't have more prizes. Number 2, if it's not, don't shout it out. If it's not on my blank, it didn't happen. If it's not on my phone, it didn't happen. Let's have a hand for the gentleman who got that. All right. So, let's see. Okay. So, I can get this one to you. And then who had the right answer on the enemy? Okay. Would you do that? That would be great. Okay, Alan's going to be my runner for this. Thank you so much, sir. If you're in Sacramento, visit Taste of Tuscany. Number 3, millennials, and really customers everywhere. So it's true for customers everywhere. Most of us don't, unless you're literally having tea at the plaza, most of us aren't really comfortable with that style of service. So millennials are most comfortable with an authentic, eye-level, blank-on-peer style of service.
Go way in the back, yellow.
All right, way in the back, yellow. Peer on peer is what I was looking for. Let's have a hand for person in yellow. All right, 2 more prizes. One is an Amazon gift card. One is my book. I will actually tell you the better one to get is the Amazon gift card because, I mean, just speaking logically, because this is enough to buy my shortest book. It is. But it's also enough to buy whatever else you might want. So slightly better prize. On the other hand, whoever gets this one, I'll sign it for you if you want. So we're going to make, and just to help my ego, we're going to make this one the grand prize, all right? We'll make this one number 5. But number 4, millennial customers enjoy finding blank meaning. This is probably the hardest question here. Blank meaning in the services and products they purchase.
Want to go right back there in the black?
Attached meaning, that's right. And what does it, I just take, because this is kind of a new concept for most people. What does that mean? You get the prize either way. Yeah, so in addition to generally a cause, that's usually what I meant. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it can just mean a connection to the local area. So it's more than just the provision of the good or service. Exactly right. And extra credit because she defined it afterwards. All right, grand prize. This is my shortest book, but you're welcome for that. If I hadn't worked on it for so long, it would be longer, right? The writer Elmore Leonard, he says that his secret of writing books people will want to read is he tries to take out the part you would skip over anyway. Don't shout it out, okay? The answer is blank. Now, what was your question? All right. The answer is yes. Now, what was your question? All right. And here, and later I'll sign it for you if you want. I don't know if that increases or reduces the value. On eBay, I'm not actually sure. All right, I just have one more thing to tell you. If you think great customer service is expensive, and the guy who was up here before was talking about labor costs and so forth. It's true. To get your phones answered right takes more people, all right? So you might think, oh, it's expensive. If you think customer service is expensive, maybe you aren't good at math. It's so much more valuable than traditional marketing. Word of mouth is everything these days. It's everything. People don't trust what companies say about themselves. They trust what other people say about them. 93% of customers say that they make decisions based in full or in part on word of mouth recommendations. 93%. So I thought 2 things about this statistic. Number 1, obviously it's true, right? The other thing I thought was, who in the world are the 7%? I found out it's my uncle. So other than my uncle, everyone listens to word of mouth. Thank you guys so much. If you can have a rest of your show, I hope you enjoy your show.